This movie is going to cover adding a background image in Maya using geometry. Some advantages of using geometry over the image plane are you can set it up so that it's a full environment, like an environment sphere or cube, and that way you can navigate through the environment, whereas with an image plane, you're pretty limited in that respect. Another advantage is it works with any renderer, so the image plane won't work with Hardware 2.0, but this textured geometry actually will work fine. Some disadvantages are it takes a little bit longer to set up, it can get in your way, but I'll try to show you ways that it won't get in your way as we do this. It's not very difficult to set up. It's just more difficult than using Maya's built-in image plane. So let's get to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an environment that is just big enough to contain this whole thing, and I'll just use a cylinder to do that. And it doesn't have to be highly tessellated because it's just going to be it's not going to be shaded, so you won't see any of the typical stuff that you would see with a low poly cylinder. Like it won't have any edges or facets or anything like that. So it can be low here, and that just makes it easier to edit. And so I'll just go ahead and make sure it's facing up Y, and then do a scale on it to fit the whole environment. So I'll just pull out so I can see it. I'll just make it big enough to contain the whole world. So that'd be big enough. And so depending on what you have going on, you might want yours to be bigger, to have a little bit less parallax. The further away you push it away from the camera, the less it's going to move with translations. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and make a few changes to this. I'm going to hold down D and then add V to move the pivot point to the bottom. I'm going to hold Move tool, and I'll press V, snap this up, and I'll just pull it down so that the environment is completely contained within it. So this is the first thing that can happen is oftentimes the background will actually get in your way. It's pretty easy to fix this. It's just good to know about it. With your object selected, press Control A to open the attribute editor, and actually this opened right to the right spot. In the render stats for the shape, pull down to this area here. You're going to turn off double-sided, which means it won't render both sides of this. So if I push inside of it, I won't see anything anymore. And then I'll turn on this flag opposite, and that means I'll be able to see through it from the outside, but it will show up fine from the inside. So this is the way you want to have this this set up. One other thing you'll want to do in here is go ahead and turn off cast shadows and receive shadows. This is just a far back background. You wouldn't want this casting shadows all over your entire scene. So that should be good. So I'll go ahead and make another couple minor changes. I'll just grab these points and pull them down to something like this. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and add my texture. So I actually need to do that in the Hypershade. Rendering Editor's Hypershade. And in this case, we don't want any shading, so the right choice is the surface shader. We just want the image that we feed this to be what the output looks like. We don't want to have any lighting effects on this whatsoever. So I'll just go ahead and add a file node as well. And middle click and drag from File to Surface Shader and choose Default. And then double click on File and find our image. Okay, so there we go. And then I'll select my object, right click and drag up to assign material to that selection. Okay, so there it shows up, and you can actually see that it looks really bad. You can't even tell what's going on at all. So there are a couple of things happening here. The first one is we need to make a change in the attribute editor to the shader, the way it's handling hardware. So on the shader itself, you pull down to Hardware Texturing and set your textured channel to Out Color, and sometimes it just needs to be pushed to be reset like that. So if it's already set to that, just set it to none and set it back, and it'll work fine. Okay, so now I can actually see my mountains, but I can tell that this is a small subset of what the whole image has. The image is showing a mountain range, and this is showing one hump of a mountain. So I'll select my object and go to the UV texture editor, and this is how you actually make things fit onto shapes in Maya here. So I'm going to want to go ahead and spread this out. This is going to add a bunch of distortion, but I'm not terribly concerned. They're just mountains in the background. So I'm just going to right click, choose UVs, pick a UV, and then hold Control, right click, and choose to shell. And then I'll just scale this out so that it's almost to the borders. Not quite to the borders, but almost. And so this most likely will be pretty bad in terms of aspect ratio, but again, it's a mountain range, so it doesn't make that much difference. I think this is actually going to work fine. So if you wanted to do that sort of the more legit way, then you could select this and tell it to unfold, and then the aspect ratio would actually be maintained. Again, in this particular case, I'm not really concerned. So I'm going to just go ahead and leave it like this. So I'll switch to my shot and we'll get a sense of what this background would look like. So the first thing I notice is I have a seam right here. So you see that cloud stopping, and let me just go ahead and turn off the wireframe there. So see the cloud stopping there. So I have a clear seam happening here, as well as some seams up high here. It's not what I want, and also it looks like in this particular case this cylinder is too close, so it feels like this mountain range is really containing us, like we're Salt Lake City or something. So I'm going to go ahead and change this up. I'm okay with the overall height. I think that looks pretty good, and I'm just going to stretch that out by holding the Control key and selecting the Y scale, and that way Y doesn't scale and everything else does. So now I have a little bit less of that feel. That's working, and actually I'm going to go ahead and continue that from this view just to push that down a little bit. Okay, so I pushed that way out. I'll go ahead back to wireframe, deselect, back in. So I can see a strong seam here. I still have a seam here, and let me see what this looks like in our other shot. It just feels a little too close, I think, something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and select this and go back to my UV texture editor and try to make a change on this where it feels like it's pushed back a little bit, which means I need to give this a little bit more height. So I'm just going to select the bottom and move it out of the way. I don't even care what the bottom looks like. I could actually delete it. Select this guy here and pull that down. So this allows me now to see more of the mountain range, and I might as well go ahead and add a little bit more height onto this thing as well. So go ahead, and again, this is stretching the crap out of that background image, but being mountains, I think it's going to work fine. Okay, so that looks better. I like how the mountains are a little smaller coming around here. We still have a seam problem, and it looks definitely much better from this perspective as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of those seams. The first one is really simple to take care of. I'll just press rotate and rotate it out of the way, and so now I don't have a seam problem anymore. And I like these little clouds that are happening over here, so I'm just going to swing it around until I get some of those clouds in my shot. I think they look pretty cool. And I'm just going to keep that seam out of my actual picture here. I'll just get some of the clouds maybe. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now I have a major seam problem up here. So again, let me just turn off, come back on. So you can see here there's a major seam problem because you know, my blue turns into the ground repeating up here because of the way that's done in the UV texture editor. So the way you'll take care of that is, again, go back to your UV texture editor, and what we're going to do is we're going to find those matching edges. And so we're going to go ahead and cut this off at one that's after this and one that's after this. So it's probably, check here, that guy and that guy. So I can't see any selected edges, so these are the two edges that are just out of frame. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those using the cut tool, and you can turn texture border edges on, and that'll show you where your seams are. So I'm going to go ahead and again right click, choose UV, select a UV, and then control right click to shell. I'll just move this part of the shell out of the way. I can't see it anyway. It's not going to be in any of my shots, so I really don't care what that part looks like. I only care what this part looks like. So what I want to do is make sure that the edge, this edge here, aligns to wherever it's supposed to go here. An easy way to do that is just to right click, choose edge, And then when you pick an edge, you can actually see the other piece of that edge highlight here. So I'll select that guy, see that guy. So I need to snap these UVs now into place. So this way, everything will start from the same place. So there won't be any texture seam there at all if I can make the full selection. So what I'll do is, again, I'll just double check. This needs to go here, and then I'll just use it all the way down the line. So I'll just hold V down and snap that UV there, and I'll just continue to snap them down until I don't have a seam anymore. And again, this wouldn't work if you were doing a heavy cloud sky or something like that, but this will work actually just fine because it's mostly just a blue color, so I can let that smear, and it really doesn't make much difference at all. So that'll look fine. I don't even have to close that seam up. I'll go ahead and go back here. So now you can see I have a seamless cloud coming up here, and actually I even kind of like the distortion that's happening on this cloud. So I'll scrub back through. So that shot looks fine. Then that shot looks fine. I think we're actually pretty good here. I might actually consider rotating this a little bit, but it's fine enough for a demonstration, I think. So that gets everything happening in here. Both shots are going to work out fine. I could actually pan this shot all over the place, and now I have this mountain range that contains me. As long as I don't hit that seam. If you need to do a full 360, you just need to make sure you have a seamless texture by altering in Photoshop or something like that. So that's pretty much how you would add a background using geometry. Again, you could do that on a sphere, you could do it with just planes, you could do it with a cube, you could do it with a cylinder. Whatever you want to do is fine. In this case, the cylinder was really easy. It gives me at full 360. I just had to do a little bit of a seaming job across here, and I was good to go. So I'll go ahead and render this just to show you that it does actually work and look fine. So I've Maya software set up right now, so I'll go ahead and do that. Everything should work fine with Maya software. Again, I haven't really done any tuning. Whoops, I'm rendering from my perspective. So I'll just go ahead and change this over to my shot 1. Run that render again. Yeah, it automatically does it when you choose it from the render menu, so I should not have clicked it. My fault. Sorry to make you wait. So it works fine from Maya software and Maya hardware 2.0. Turn that on, hit render, and it basically is instantly done. So works fine in Maya hardware. So that's a big advantage. Again, things to look for and remember to do: make sure you turn off cast shadows, and make sure you turn off receive shadows. This little trick right here allows you to see through it easily, and then make sure in your shader that you just have it set up where it's either on incandescence or an out color. That's pretty much it.